From the Aishin Broadcast Studio, it's the Executive Spotlight.
Welcome to the AutoSuccess Executive Spotlight. I'm your host, Brian Ankney. Today our guest is Bob Seal from APC. Welcome, Bob.
Brian, how you doing? Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming in. Where'd you come in from today?
St. Louis, Missouri.
Cool. Well, I'd like to dive right in.
Let's have at it.
What is a post-sale program? How does it work? What does it mean to dealership?
So post-sale service contract programs, it's an opportunity for a dealer to capture some of the service contract customers they did not sell in the finance office, as well as some of the customers in their service facility that do not have a service contract.
So you're talking about like not only the people that come in, buy a car, they say no when they're in the F&I office, it's an opportunity to sell them, but also possibly somebody that moved into the neighborhood that's just servicing with you.
Absolutely.
That doesn't have one.
Absolutely. There might be what we call those visiting owners in their service department. They're servicing their vehicle with that dealer, but they didn't purchase there. Mm-hmm. In addition, in the service department, there are going to be some of those customers who did purchase from that dealer and didn't buy a service contract, but they continue to service there.
Interesting. Yeah. So I imagine that you're utilizing the dealer's data. How do you keep that data safe?
So we do utilize the dealer's data. We keep it under banking level security in a data warehouse. Okay. And we do have a level of certification, which is a SOC 2 Type 2 certification, which ensures that we're keeping all of our data secure.
Cool. Well, I mean, how does that work? I mean, let's say a dealership that they've just got some very talented F&I managers. Let's say that they've got incredible penetration. Everybody's walking out with a contract, or 75, 80% of their people walking out with a contract. Is this an effective program for somebody like that? And how will it affect their F&I sales?
Absolutely. So first of all, Brian, every dealership has an effective F&I office, right? Yeah. They're all doing at least 75%. So to us, that's a welcome because the majority of the sales in our program are happening out of the service department. The sales information is very helpful for us to see what's happening with that customer and how they're reacting. But then that service department customer is really where we're capturing those sales. It's much more robust data. You figure a dealership that sells 100 cars a month, they might write 250 ROs a month. So a lot more data coming out of that.
I got you. More opportunities.
Sure.
Well, I mean, so the person that whether they bought the car from you or didn't buy the car from you, how is this service contract that you're presenting to these people, how does it differ from the one that the dealership is presenting on their own in the F&I office? Is it more expensive? Is it less expensive? What's different about it?
So with our program, it's going to be a more expensive service contract. One thing we don't want to do is compete with the dealer. Mm-hmm. So that alone, we're going to keep those prices higher, as well as that financially supports the price of the program, making it no cost to the dealer.
Gotcha. Actually, I wanted to ask you about that. So tell me a little bit more about no cost to the dealer, and what does the relationship look like?
Well, we'll have a relationship with the service contract administrator, who then goes out and helps us partner with their dealers. So we're going to be selling the same service contract that dealer's selling, and then in order to keep it no cost, there's a number of fees to the program, leading from data fees, marketing fees. We have to pay for our people. Those costs are layered on top of the cost of the service contract, creating our retail price.
Gotcha. So the customer is getting a service contract. The dealer is getting the profit from, they're getting a normal profit like they would normally get from a service contract, and your fees are also a part of the cost to the consumer.
Exactly.
Okay.
One correction there, though. The dealer, when we're selling the service contract, the dealer's not realizing their normal profit. We do pay the dealer a commission on the ones that we sell.
It's found money to the dealership because this is businesses they weren't getting.
Sure.
And it's additional profits. But I imagine that if you're selling service contracts to people that like doing business with you, that has an impact on your retention. Can we talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. It's a well-known fact in the industry, based on some NADA averages, that if a customer has a service contract from a dealership, they're about 85% more likely to go back to that dealership for parts and service. So that keeps them coming back to their service department. Once they're in the service department, that customer is more likely to purchase their next vehicle from that dealer as well.
So I mean, so there's a lot of benefits to this.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's you're not cannibalizing any of your own market.
Right.
You are adding additional revenue to your dealership, and you're also increasing retention with your customers because they're coming back to you for more service.
Exactly.
Wow. Yeah. that sounds pretty good to me.
Yeah.
Presented from the Aishin Broadcast Studio at Babcock's Media.
So I'm a customer. I come into the dealership. I buy a car. I do not take a service contract, or I'm the person in service and I do not have a service contract. What does this marketing look like? I mean, are you harassing these customers? Are there robocalls? Or is it a comfortable? Explain that to me.
It's so our program, Brian. It's a very customer-centric program. Mm-hmm. We're going to send out marketing materials as though they're coming from the dealership. They're going to be dealer logoed and signed by that dealer's management team, and we're going to be strategically marketing those customers at specific times in their car owning life cycle, so we know when they're most likely to purchase.
I'm interested in that. I mean, does that vary by make to make? I mean, does it have to do with when warranties are nearly up, or how do you calculate when's the right time?
So that's a big part. Obviously, the vehicles that have a 40 or 50,000 mile warranty, right? We're going to wait a little bit longer before we market those customers. But like I said, outside of that factory warranty expiration, a lot of that buying propensity comes from what they're doing in the service department.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So are they outside of factory warranty? Did they just have a large repair that they had to pay out of pocket for? Things like that will get them thinking about it's time for a service contract. We actually found out during COVID, the business skyrocketed because customers were keeping their cars because they couldn't trade them in.
They couldn't get new ones.
So now instead of having a 5 or 6 year old car, they're looking at having a car for 8 or 10 years, and they wanted to protect it.
Interesting. So you mentioned that they had just had a large purchase in the service department. So there's actually triggers that are triggering for individual customers. This customer has had a large repair. We're going to grab them. It's not just because they've had the car for 48 months.
Right. So the data shows what they were in service for. Mm-hmm. Was it a tire rotation? Was it an oil change? Did they have an engine repair, transmission replaced, things like that?
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, why wouldn't a dealer just try to do this on their own?
Well, many of them have tried. Many of them still do try.
Yeah.
It's very easy for a dealer to market to their sales data because it's right there. It's just it's pretty bland data, right? But in order to mine their service department data, it's a little more tricky. Then they have to pay to have those marketing pieces go out. The trickiest part of the dealership level, if they could figure all that out, the phones are going to start ringing.
Oh,
okay?
Yeah.
They have to have somebody at the dealership that can answer that phone and that's trained to sell a service contract over the phone. It's a totally different type of sale than when a customer's sitting in front of you. Different skill set.
Huh. Interesting. Well, and I mean, just from other interviews, I've heard some eerie statistics about how frequently the phone doesn't get answered in the service department. Right.
Right.
What is it? About 30% of the time it's not answered.
Not only the service department.
That's sales too.
Well, we've had many of instances where you hear horror stories where a customer calls a dealership and they might be looking for a service contract and they get transferred all over the place and they might end up into an empty voicemail box or just get into a voicemail box and leave a message and never hear back.
Wow.
So,
well, I guess that makes sense. If you don't have anybody to answer the phone calls you already have, you don't need more phone calls.
That's the trickiest part.
So if a dealer is participating in your program, will the sales go into their reinsurance position?
Absolutely. For us, it doesn't matter what happens. It's left up to that dealer's service contract administrator. Most of them do allow it because it's additional premium that's going into that reinsurance position, and it doesn't affect it negatively.
Well, you mentioned in the beginning of the interview that the communications look like they're coming from the dealership, and yes. so to the customer, they don't they feel like that's coming directly from the dealership. So I imagine that there is some times when they walk into the dealership, when they call the dealership, when they go on the website, maybe they try to chat with the dealership about this program. When you're launching this, I imagine there's an implementation process. Can you let me know what that looks like?
Great question.
Yeah.
So yes, part of our program, we know that Customers are going to call us to purchase a service contract. Other customers are more comfortable calling the dealership or going back to the dealership. In that case, dealerships are going to treat that customer like a regular walk-in traffic, sell them a service contract. In many instances, they'll end up selling them a vehicle instead of a service contract. So that's just a byproduct of our program. When that happens, we don't receive any compensation from the dealer. They retain all that profit in-house at the dealership level. So it's a great little byproduct of the program for the dealer.
Wow, that's interesting. So they even get to sell some extra cars.
Yeah, absolutely. We see on our program, we see that for every dealer in our program sells about 2 additional vehicles a month.
Really? That's pretty slick. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So I guess you're able to track that because you know that Brian Ankney came in. He just had to do a very expensive repair.
Right.
So we sent him a thing saying he should have a service contract. Brian drives in. Brian buys a new car, and you're able to track that all the way through the process.
Because when the data continues to be fed to us, we see that Brian purchased a new car. Right.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So.
Well, that's great, Bob. Is there anything more you'd like to share with our audience today?
You know what? It's a great program. It's no cost to anybody involved, no cost to the dealer, no cost to the administrator. Agencies are involved in this as well. It's no cost to them. So it's just a great program to take advantage, to take care of your customers.
Awesome. Well, Bob, thank you for coming in today.
Brian, thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.
And thank you for taking the time to join us for this AutoSuccess Executive Spotlight. I'm your host, Brian Ankney. Today, our guest has been Bob Seal from APC. We hope to see you again on a future episode. This one's Over the Curb and Burning Gas.